In this video, we're going to create a project and we're going to import all the files for our mix. This song is by the band The Hawthorne Effect out of Chicago. I'd like to thank Scott Fritz, the producer, for once again providing me master tracks that I can use for the demo. So to create the project, I've already typed in the name. I'm just going to click OK and notice I'm just selecting a normal project. Now, a normal project will come up looking something like this. We're just going to close out the extra things. We can close the inspector by hitting I, close the mixing or the console view with D for closing the multi-dock. I can hide the master section right there or by clicking right here. I'll also close the browser by hitting B. So I'm going to also click the first one here, hold down Shift while clicking the second track number, then right click and I'll delete these tracks. Now I've got a completely blank project. I also don't really need this view, so I'm going to right click here and hide this extra display area. Now the next thing I want to do is set the tempo. If you're mixing a song that you're importing from another system, it's a good idea to make sure that you know the tempo. It will save you quite a bit of time. The tempo here is 85 beats per minute. So I'll just type that in, hit enter, and I've got the tempo set. Now before I do the import, I want to set this to full bars or measures. So if I right click here, I can set this to measure. This is snap. I want snap turned on so when I drag all the files or tracks in that they can snap to the downbeat of the first measure. Now here are all the tracks that I have to work with. There's 26 tracks I believe that we've got to work with. All I need to do is really just drag them from the Explorer view right into the project. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just select the first one, hold Shift, select the last one, and I'll just drag them in and I'll drop them right in this general area here. All right, so that took a couple minutes. Now all the tracks have been imported into my project. I've got the tempo set. I'll need to check to make sure everything is playing back on the downbeat, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now the very next thing I want to do is make sure the imported audio went where I was expecting, part of the project folder structure. So I go to Project, Audio Files, and here's a list of all the audio files that I have in the project so far. And you can see that they're all in here under the project folder structure, so there's no problem with that. So I can click OK with that, and then I'm going to save the project. Just hit Control S, and I save the project. Now I'm going to start to reorganize the order of the tracks and the names of the tracks. So there's a pretty conventional way to organize tracks, starting with the kick drum. So I'm going to put the kick drum first, just drag it to the top, followed by the snare, and this would be followed by toms if I had toms. But I've got left and right overhead, so I'll put these up here. I'm going to group all of the drums and rhythm instruments at the top, and then I'll start to also rename. So I've got rim shots. I'll put that right after the snare. Shakers, I'll put after the ambience right in here. And now I'm going to start to rename these more conventionally. These came in with some track numbers, so I'll just start to take those out. Now, a lot of mixing is prep work. It takes a little time, but your results are going to be much better if you keep your project organized. Now, I can move between tracks with the up and down arrows, and I can open this for editing with F2, so I don't really have to mouse around a lot. I'll just arrow to the next one, hit F2, and take out all this extra stuff that I don't really need. Overhead left, I do want that. F2, overhead right, F2, take out this part here. Ambience, I'm going to rename that room since that's more to my standard. Open this, and shakers is just fine. After the bass, I'll start to bring up these guitar tracks. So I've got this guitar clean, which I already know is kind of my main rhythm guitar part. And then I'll just put all of these other guitar parts underneath that. We'll sort through these later on, and we might change the order of these. But right now, we've got our basic things. These slide parts are extra, and then we've got the guitar solo, which I'm completely fine having that last. We now have all the background vocals, and John Compt is our lead vocal. I'm going to call that Vox lead. All these background vocals have a little bit of extra stuff on them, so I'll edit these. I'll come back and edit those guitars in a minute. And again, I can hit F2 to get into the field and then just delete the extra stuff that I don't need. Arrow to the next one, F2. Use the arrows to arrow to the end and then delete the extra stuff. So I finished renaming all the tracks, and I'm going to go with this naming scheme for now. We might change this later as we get into listening to all the tracks and we understand what we have a little bit better. Right now, one thing I see right here is that I've got a lot of background vocals. I'll have to sort through that when I get to that in the project, but for now, I want to simplify the view even more. So I'm going to put these into a folder or into a folder track. So I click the first track number, hold down Shift while clicking the last track number. Then all I need to do is right-click on any of them and select to move to folder. There are no folders in existence, so we'll do a new folder track. I'll call it Back Vox for now, and I'll collapse it to simplify that view. I'm also going to mute it at this point. Now I want to start to listen to the tracks just to see a little bit about what we've got. So I'm going to take this one here. I'm going to mute this fuzz part. Basically, I'm going to mute off a lot of extra stuff here. Now we're going to listen to playback of these basic parts, and we'll just kind of see where we're at.
To the darkness, down with the
The next thing I want to do is make sure that the song is actually aligned to the grid. Now I knew that the tempo was set correctly, but we need to zoom in a little bit here just to see if we're on the right track. So I'll use Control and the arrow key to zoom in horizontally here. We can see that we've got the kick, and this is the intro here to the song, and I think this is looking okay. All right, it's fine there. Now, let's just make sure that the tempo doesn't drift later in the song. So we'll go way out here toward the end of the song. Another thing sometimes I'll do at this point is turn the metronome on in playback. You can do that right here. All right, so playback is in sync with the grid. We've checked that against the metronome. A couple of handy keyboard shortcuts here. If we want to collapse all the tracks to fit on the screen, we can hit F. That will adjust them all vertically. The other thing we can do is use Shift F, and that will actually get them all on screen in this direction. I use zoom in and zoom out by holding down Control and then using the arrow keys, so we can make additional adjustments with that. So in this video, we created the project, we imported all the tracks, we renamed everything, got all the tracks in the right order, we created a folder track for the background vocals to simplify the project, and we've also checked the timing to make sure the song lines up with the grid that we've set up for our song. In the next video, we're going to continue by setting up some buses that we're going to use as we mix the project. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.